Welcome to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, the home for financial advice in a language you can understand. Created by Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial, he and his team of certified financial planner professionals will discuss timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. And now, get ready for this week's edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial.
Welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Marion Gilman.
And we're here to provide you with some more financial advice in a language you can understand.
Seems like we do this every week.
We do this every week. And, rational advice during these crazy times is something I think that many of our clients and our listeners truly enjoy.
Right. I think that's so important because you really need to step back and think about what you can control.
Absolutely, because the news of the day, the headlines we receive, the notifications you get on your phone, those are kind of out of your control.
Absolutely. And whether it's news or fake news or whatever it is, you can't respond to all of that, or else you'll just be in a total emotional state that is in turmoil all the time.
And I love how people will say that, oh, well, I get my news from independent sources, which must mean that the sources that you're getting your independent news from is accurate.
You really think so?
I don't think so. What it really is
one person's opinion.
Or several people that have a shared opinion about something. And, I talked at Babson College last week, actually, when I was discussing with students, and I said, how many of you have a circle of friends where that group of friends all has differing opinions on a variety of different issues? And chances are the answer is very few, if any. In fact, I think even if we look at our own circle of friends, our circle of colleagues or whatever, having differences of opinions have become a challenging environment to be in.
And, we typically, just normally, I think you associate with others who have the same interests as you, same viewpoints as you. And if you're, active in any organizations, a lot of times those people have similar viewpoints as you do. And you sort of get stuck in that. And I think you need to make a conscious effort sometimes to actually go out and find people who have a different opinion.
Yeah, because what ends up happening, whether you collect your information from independent news sources, your independent news sources, from national media sources, from notifications, from social media, whatever it is, you have confirmation bias. And there are algorithms that are built to force this confirmation bias.
Absolutely. And, they just reinforce and reinforce. And you are listening to people who simply reinforce your own opinions.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Or reading people.
So here we are about 5-6 weeks into this war that's been going on.
That was only going to last 2 weeks, right?
Well, you knew that there was no way that was going to happen.
That's right.
But now everybody, just because Donald Trump said 2 weeks, everyone wants to hold him. Well, you said 2 weeks. And then now that we're at 6 weeks, they say, well, you don't have a plan. And it's whether you agree with him or not, and everybody has a different opinion about our president and the government and whatnot. I think what's really interesting, because as I had a conversation with a client today, he was saying, Mark, man, the state of America is really in tough shape.
And a lot of people share that viewpoint, I think, right now.
Right. But so I said to them, tell me, I'm curious, what about America is in tough shape? And when people are asked that question, it's just in tough shape. Well, what do you mean by that? And so this person who I talked to today says, well, Speaker Johnson's the problem. Look, you can point fingers at a lot of different people, but I wasn't thinking that he was going to actually point it at Speaker Johnson. I could have seen him saying, well, Donald Trump's an issue. But then I would say, well, tell me what it is about Donald Trump that bothers you. Because the whole point is here, if we just let people just say these general statements, the America's in tough shape. We have no plan for this war. Well, what do you mean by that? Tell me what's making you feel this way. Or are you just sharing thoughts that you hear from other people?
Well, it's interesting. Today, we just got this update on the Middle East conflict from one of the mutual fund companies that we deal with. And, they had some interesting tidbits of information on here. And although many people will say, oh, America is really in tough shape, in reality, according to actually many analysts, economists, and others in the market, first of all, the markets are reacting, stock markets reacting to economic and profit uncertainty.
The market hates uncertainty.
That's right. However, if you look at GDP growth, it has not declined.
Not at all. And let's be sure
careful.
our listeners understand, what is GDP growth?
So that's gross domestic product. In other words, what is going on in the US, whether we are producing more or less, and it has not started to decline. And that's actually, when you listen to the Federal Reserve Chairman, he's looking at statistics in the market, and growth is still relatively strong.
So when I hear the word GDP, I always think back to my first days taking macroeconomics in college.
That's GDP.
And it's GDP. It's this equation that I needed to learn. And the equation is C plus I plus G plus E minus M. Now let me explain to you what those letters stand for.
So for the normal person, that means nothing.
It means nothing. So C stands for all of the revenue that consumers, all of the money that the consumers
individuals
spend.
Like you and I.
Yeah, the money that we spend on stuff. I is interest.
That's
interest that is earned on
income, on bonds, on bank accounts, whatever it might be.
G is government spending.
Correct.
So the money that consumers spend plus the interest that's earned plus government spending. And then we add that to the net growth of the money that we receive from imports less what we spend on exports. And if that number grows, it means we're having positive GDP growth.
That's right. And we have not slowed down on that growth as of right now. So anything can happen, yes, absolutely. But when you look at the underlying factors in the economy, the other thing that analysts pay a lot of attention to are corporate balance sheets. In other words, how strong is a corporation? Do they have a lot of loans out there, a lot of bonds out there? Can they pay their bills?
Do they have a lot of cash? Do they have money that they can invest in things?
Are they in good shape? And a corporate balance sheet will tell you that. And as of right now, corporate balance sheets are still very strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're not seeing a decline there. We're also seeing, look at that hype about AI. So all the things that are going on in the market, there are still new companies, new areas of growth. So, we're in reality, the economy in the US is still doing quite well. The one thing that consumers are feeling are oil prices, gas prices.
When they go to the pump, they see that prices are high. Now, they've been there before, right?
They've been even a lot higher,
right?
Right.
But, they've been there before. So what do some of the analysts, what does some of the investment community think about what's going on with oil, Marion?
They think it's temporary. I mean, essentially, yes, we're having some challenges moving the oil around. It is not that we don't have enough oil. It's more getting it to the places where it is needed. And that's become the issue. The Strait of Hormuz, as we've all heard about, constant. And what is happening, let's say in China, they're completely dependent on oil that is coming from the Middle East. So they're challenged right now because they're not getting the energy that they need. But the other thing that was really eye-opening to me is they said that the U.S. Economy is 58% less energy intensive than it was in the 1970s. For those of you who remember the gas crisis back then, or the oil crisis and all, we are 58% less dependent on energy now than we were then.
Yeah, think about that. Now, I was really young back then.
Look at us. You have an electric car.
I do. I have an electric car.
I have to go to the gas station.
Yeah.
So,
But, if I remember this correctly, wasn't there some rules back in the 70s where you could only get gas on certain days,
Yeah,
and it was
depended-
based upon your license plate
That's
or something?
right. Whatever the last number of your license plate was, if it was even or odd, those you could go to the gas station, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It was, and there were lines at those gas stations because there were limits on the amount of gas.
And that
But,
was regular gasoline too, wasn't it?
That was regular gas. You know what? Back then, so my father had a station wagon,
Mm-hmm.
and it got about 4 or 5 miles to the gallon. So once again, when you think about that, I don't know any cars today that actually get 4 to 5 miles to a gallon.
25 to 40 miles a gallon in many cases, right?
Right.
Yeah, the efficiency of cars and combustible engines has
Exactly.
become so much better as well.
Right.
So it's just, I find it fascinating how headlines, news, sound bites, notifications you get on your phone really raise the ire of a lot of people. So I asked somebody this week, and granted, when you watch this piece, it will be after the president brings everybody up to date on what's going on in Iran. And it looks like we're coming to, or we've got a plan to wind down. I don't know what that looks like. We'll find out later tonight. But the client that was in the office today said to me, I asked him, I said, will you be watching the president tonight on where we are with the state of the war and what the plan is next? And he said, absolutely not. And I thought to myself, well, then where will you get your information about what the president said? Well, he, like most people, will rely on sound bites, notifications, headlines, little blurbs that appear on television, which are chosen based upon the media outlet or independent source that you follow. The only way to truly understand what the message is and for you to truly make an independent decision is to listen to what comes out of the horse's mouth.
So it's the primary source that you're looking for. You're not looking for a secondary interpretation of what he said. You're looking for what is actually said.
But Marion, everyone says the same thing. I don't have time for this. How do you respond?
I guess if you have time to read reports afterwards, then you probably have time to watch.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of.
And by the way, I mean, you can replay it at your convenience whenever you want.
It's funny. We will spend hours scrolling through social media posts, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever your choice is. Maybe it's newspaper feeds, whatever it is. We spend hours doing that. And what we do is we look for the headline. We look for what's the first paragraph, perhaps, to see if it grabs our attention. If not, we move on. And that creates that confirmation bias.
That's right. So you need to be incredibly careful about where you get your information and make sure you are getting that primary source, not an interpretation.
Yeah, I love when I see these people on social media post, they'll put a word, what he said, or read this. And they didn't read anything. They're just forwarding along a social media post that they received. They didn't even read the whole thing. Because when you ask them what it was all about, they can't even tell you. They just thought the headline was really cool, and that aligns with what they're thinking. We are better than that. We were taught in school to be better than that. When we learned about journalistic integrity back then, you had to confirm your source. You had to get two confirmations of sources. All of that kind of stuff.
And it was fact-checked.
Right. That's all been thrown out the window. So let's be careful before we start to make demonstrative statements on what we think the world is thinking, what we're thinking. Let's do better, all of us, in trying to be less confirmation biased. That's what we call financial advice. That's what we call financial advice in a language you can understand. If now is the time for you to get serious about your financial planning or investment management needs, we hope you'll give us a call. 978-531-8108. That's 978-531-8108. Or visit us on the web, freedmanfinancial.com. That's Freedman.
2 E's in a day.
Financial.com. And you can go to the bottom of any page on our website, put in your name, your email address, and you will get our free weekly newsletter that lands in your inbox every Friday, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. We've been delivering this newsletter since March of 2009. And you know what happened then. So remember that time?
Oh, vividly.
Back then, when that
Unfortunately, it was vivid.
yeah,
Still
when that
vivid.
newsletter came out, the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, was hanging around 6,600. So whether it's 45,000 or 50,000 or 40,000 or 60,000,
We've come
man,
a long
we
way.
sure have. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll see you again next week with more financial advice in a language you can understand. Have a great day.
Enjoy.
During today's episode of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, your host may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.